Do you like mysteries? To wander through the enigmatic mist of the inexplicable? Great. I'm Merc, and here you'll find what you're looking for. Welcome to my domains. The truth dissolves into the mist.
Key in the heart of Tokyo, on some of the most expensive real estate on planet Earth, surrounded by skyscrapers that housed Fortune 500 companies and positioned just a stone's throw from the Imperial Palace. There is a small, unassuming stone monument that the Japanese government will not touch, no matter what. This is the Masakado-zuka, the head mound of Taira, no Masakado, one of the most feared and vengeful spirits in Japanese folklore, a man who was killed in the year 940 but whose ghost has terrorized the region for over 1,000 years. Think about that for a moment. A medieval samurai whose curse is so potent, so deeply feared, that modern corporations, government officials, and even the American occupation forces have bowed to his will. But what happens when a reckless streamer decides to mock this ancient power? What happens when someone treats a 1,000-year-old curse as a joke? On August 19, 2026, a Japanese live streamer named Ainosuke, broadcasting on the platform Kick, visited the Masakado-zuka in Tokyo's Tetamachi district. He climbed onto the stone monument, wrapped his arms around it, and began making strange, exaggerated cries toward the camera he had placed on the ground. Then, in an act of almost incomprehensible disrespect, he pulled down his pants and gave the middle finger to the grave of one of Japan's 3 greatest vengeful spirits. The clips spread across X like wildfire, and the reaction was not just outrage, it was fear, genuine, palpable fear. Because this was not just any memorial, this was the resting place of Taira no Masakado, a man whose severed head refused to decay, whose ghost has been blamed for earthquakes, mysterious deaths, and the ruin of anyone foolish enough to disrespect him. So the question you have to ask yourself is this: what happens to a man who mocks a curse that has terrified an entire nation for 11 centuries? To understand the magnitude of what Ainosuke did, you first need to understand who Taira no Masakado was and why his spirit remains one of the most feared in all of Japan. Masakado was a powerful samurai and provincial magnate during the Heian period, a time when Japan was ruled from the distant capital of Kyoto. He was a member of the Taira clan, a fierce warrior who led the first recorded uprising against the central government. In the year 939, Masakado did the unthinkable. He declared himself the new emperor, seized 2 northern provinces, and directly challenged the divine authority of the throne. Shocked by his treachery, the real emperor put a price on his head, and Masakado was eventually killed in battle in 940 by one of his own cousins. But his death did not end his rebellion. In fact, it may have only begun the true terror of his legend. His severed head was transported to Kyoto and put on public display as a warning to all who would defy the emperor. But the head refused to rot. It opened its eyes, ground its teeth, and for months it showed no sign of decomposition. Every night the head would cry out, demanding to know where its body was, challenging anyone who would listen to come and fight it again. Eventually, the head flew away, soaring hundreds of kilometers back toward eastern Japan, until it landed near what is now the Tetamachi district of Tokyo. The locals, terrified of this supernatural phenomenon, washed the head, buried it with full honors, and inscribed a gravestone with charms designed to prevent Masakado's spirit from escaping. They built a mound over it, the Kubuzuka, the head mound, and they hoped that would be the end of it. But they were wrong, because the spirit of Taira no Masakado was not so easily appeased. For centuries, the Kubizuka stood as a quiet, unassuming memorial, but whenever bad luck struck the surrounding area, It was inevitably blamed on Masakado, lightning strikes, strange apparitions, unexplained illnesses. All of it was attributed to the restless onryō, the vengeful ghost of the rebel samurai. But it was in the 20th century that the curse of Masakado truly entered the modern consciousness, when the Japanese government made the mistake of trying to move his grave. In Ijuar-san, the great Kanto earthquake devastated Tokyo, leveling buildings and claiming over 100,000 lives. In the aftermath, the Ministry of Finance saw an opportunity to redevelop the land surrounding the Masakado-zuka, planning to construct a new building on the site. But as construction began, a series of inexplicable deaths began to occur. Workers died in accidents. Officials connected to the project perished under mysterious circumstances. And in total, 14 people lost their lives in just 5 years, including the finance minister himself. The ministry abandoned the project, gave up on building on the site, and erected a stone monument in 1927 to appease the spirit. But the curse did not end there, because the story of Masakado's vengeance was only just beginning to grow. When the American occupation forces arrived in Japan after World War II, General Douglas MacArthur reportedly set his sights on the land containing the Masakado-zuka. The Americans planned to clear the area and rearrange the district. But legend has it that when a bulldozer struck the foundation stone of the Kubazuka, it overturned suddenly and killed its operator. The occupation forces, spooked by the incident, abandoned their plans and left the mound untouched. To this day, the Masakado-zuka remains in the heart of Tokyo's financial district, an island of ancient superstition surrounded by glass and steel. But here is where it gets truly unsettling. The curse is not just a story from the past. It is a living, breathing presence that continues to shape the city to this day. Employees at nearby banks and office buildings are reportedly instructed not to open windows that face the grave and never to turn their backs on it, even when sitting at their desks. One major bank, Tokyo Mitsubishi UFJ, even opened a bank account in the name of Taira no Masakado, a man who has been dead for over 1,000 years, just to placate his spirit. Donations to maintain the shrine are deposited into this account, and the funds are used by a local volunteer group to keep the site clean and respected. Office workers going on business trips often bring small frog figurines to the shrine, because in Japanese, the word for frog, karu, is a pun on the word for return, a reference to the return of Masakado's head from Kyoto. They do this to wish for a safe return, to appease the spirit, and to avoid his wrath. This is not a forgotten superstition from a bygone era. This is a modern, living fear that permeates the daily lives of people in one of the most advanced cities on earth. And into this world of ancient dread and modern superstition walked Ainosuke, a streamer who thought it would be funny to mock a 1,000-year-old vengeful ghost. Now, you have to wonder, what kind of person does something like that? What kind of arrogance or ignorance drives a man to climb onto a sacred monument, pull down his pants, and flip off the spirit of one of Japan's most feared onryō? Was he seeking attention, chasing clout, or did he simply not believe in the curse? Perhaps he thought it was all just a story, a fairy tale to scare children and tourists. But the people of Tokyo know better. They have seen what happens to those who disrespect Masakado, and they know that the curse is not a joke. The reaction on social media was swift and fierce, with many Japanese users expressing not just anger, but genuine fear for what might happen next. Some said that Ainosuke had brought disaster upon himself. Others worried that his actions might bring misfortune to the entire city. Because in Japanese folklore, the onryō is not just a ghost that haunts individuals. It is a spirit capable of causing widespread calamity, earthquakes, plagues, and political upheaval. Taira no Masakado is considered one of the 3 great onryō of Japan, alongside Sugawara no Misyazan and Emperor Sutoku. These are not petty ghosts who just want to scare people. They are forces of nature, spirits whose anger can reshape the destiny of nations. And now, one of them has been openly mocked, insulted, and disrespected in the most vulgar way imaginable. So what happens next? Does the curse of Masakado claim another victim? Or has Ainosuke's act of defiance somehow broken the power of the ancient spirit? The answer, if you believe in such things, is not something you would want to bet your life on. You have to understand, the curse of Taira no Masakado is not a simple matter of bad luck or coincidence. It is a force that has been observed, documented, and feared for over a millennium, and the list of those who have suffered its wrath is long and terrifying. Consider the story of the Ministry of Finance, 14 people dead in 5 years, all connected to the attempt to build on Masakado's grave. Consider the bulldozer operator who died when his machine mysteriously overturned after striking the foundation stone of the Kubizuka. Consider the American occupation forces who abandoned their plans to clear the area after a series of inexplicable accidents. These are not just stories told around a campfire. They are historical events, documented incidents that have shaped the development of one of the most important financial districts in the world. And yet, despite all of this evidence, despite centuries of fear and respect, there are still those who choose to mock the spirit of Masakado, to test the boundaries of the curse. Ainosuke is not the first person to disrespect the grave, and he likely will not be the last, but his actions were particularly egregious, particularly public, and particularly offensive. He climbed onto the stone monument, a structure that has stood for centuries as a symbol of respect and fear. He wrapped his arms around it, as if embracing a friend, and then he screamed and shouted like a madman. And then, in the ultimate act of defiance, he pulled down his pants and exposed himself to the spirit of Taira no Masakado. It is difficult to imagine a more complete and total act of disrespect, a more deliberate and calculated insult to a spirit that has been feared for 1,000 years. But what is perhaps most troubling about this incident is not what Ainosuke did, but what happened afterward, because in the days following his stream, his kick account reportedly became inaccessible. Was it a coincidence, a simple technical issue, or was it something more sinister? Did the spirit of Masakado reach out from beyond the grave to silence his tormentor? We may never know for certain, but the timing is certainly suspicious, and it has only added to the growing unease surrounding this incident. Some have speculated that Ainosuke may have already suffered the consequences of his actions, that the curse has already begun to take effect. Others believe that the true punishment is yet to come, that Masakado's vengeance is patient, calculated, and inevitable. After all, the curse of Masakado is not always immediate. Sometimes it takes years, even decades, to manifest fully. Consider the fate of those who tried to move his grave in the 1920s. They did not all die immediately, but over time death claimed them one by one, 14 in total. Consider the fate of the bulldozer operator, whose death came suddenly and unexpectedly, a clear and unmistakable sign of Masakado's anger. The curse does not discriminate. It does not care about your intentions or your beliefs. It simply acts, and when it does, the results are always catastrophic. But there is another angle to this story that is equally unsettling. The possibility that Ainosuke's actions could bring misfortune not just to himself, but to the entire city of Tokyo. You see, in Japanese folklore, the onryō is not just a personal threat. It is a force that can affect entire communities, entire nations. The spirit of Masakado is intimately connected to the fortunes of Tokyo, and many believe that the condition of his Kubazuka dictates the destiny of the metropolis. If the shrine is respected and maintained, the city prospers, but if it is neglected or desecrated, disaster follows. This is not just superstition, it is a deeply held belief that has been passed down through generations, a belief that has shaped the development of one of the world's greatest cities. The Masakado-zuka sits on land worth billions of dollars, land that developers would love to use for new skyscrapers and commercial projects. And yet, the government refuses to touch it. Corporations refuse to build on it. and even the most powerful people in Japan bow to the will of a spirit that died over 1,000 years ago. Why? If there were not some truth to the curse, if there were not some tangible reason to fear the wrath of Masakado, and now a streamer has openly mocked this spirit, has challenged its power, and has invited its wrath upon himself and potentially upon the entire city. What happens when an onryō is insulted so publicly, so deliberately, and so completely? The answer, according to Japanese folklore, is that the spirit's anger intensifies, its power grows, and its vengeance becomes even more terrible. The onryō is not a forgiving spirit. It does not forget, and it does not relent. It pursues its vengeance with a single-minded determination that is truly terrifying to behold. Consider the case of Sugawara no Mishi-san, another of the 3 great onryō of Japan, who was wrongly exiled and died in disgrace. After his death, a series of calamities befell the capital, including lightning strikes that killed many courtiers and a devastating plague. The emperor, desperate to appease his spirit, eventually deified him and built shrines in his honor, and only then did the calamities cease. This is the power of the onryō, a power that can bring empires to their knees and reshape the course of history. And Taira no Masakado is no different. His spirit has been feared for over 1,000 years, and his curse has been blamed for some of the most tragic events in Japanese history. So when Ainosuke pulled down his pants at the Masakado-zuka, he was not just being foolish. He was potentially unleashing a force that could have consequences far beyond his own personal misfortune. The clips of his stream spread rapidly across social media, and the reaction was one of shock and fear. People were not just angry, they were genuinely terrified. Terrified of what Masakado might do in response to such a blatant act of disrespect. Some called for Ainosuke to apologize immediately, to perform rituals of purification, and to beg for Masakado's forgiveness. Others warned that it was already too late, that the spirit had already been awakened, and that nothing could stop the coming vengeance. And then there were those who simply watched and waited, knowing that the curse of Masakado is not a matter of if, but when. Days passed, and the initial outrage began to fade, but the sense of unease remained, a lingering dread that something terrible was about to happen. Ainosuke issued a public apology, acknowledging that his actions had been thoughtless and that he would strive to be more respectful in the future. But was it enough? Could a simple apology truly appease a spirit that had been insulted so completely? History suggests that the answer is no, that the onryō does not accept apologies. It demands blood, it demands suffering, and it demands vengeance. The story of Taira no Masakado is not just a legend, it is a warning, a cautionary tale about the dangers of disrespecting the spirits of the dead. It is a reminder that there are forces in this world that we do not fully understand, forces that do not care about our modern sensibilities or our disbelief. And it is a testament to the enduring power of fear, a fear that has kept a small stone monument untouched in the heart of Tokyo for over 1,000 years. So as we watch this story unfold, as we wait to see what happens to the streamer who dared to mock a vengeful ghost, we must ask ourselves a fundamental question. What would you do if you found yourself standing before the grave of Taira no Masakado? Would you bow in respect, or would you laugh in defiance? The answer to that question might just determine your fate, because the curse of Masakado is real, and it is waiting for the next fool to test its power. The streamer may have escaped immediate consequences, but the spirit of Masakado is patient, and its vengeance is inevitable. The question is not whether the curse will strike, but when, and how terrible the consequences will be. Because in the end, the story of Taira no Masakado is not just about a man who died 1,000 years ago. It is about the power of belief, the persistence of fear, and the enduring legacy of a spirit that refuses to rest. And as long as that spirit exists, as long as the Masakado-zuka stands in the heart of Tokyo, the curse will continue to haunt the living, waiting for the next act of disrespect, the next challenge to its ancient power. So remember this the next time you hear about a haunted place or a cursed object. Because the story of Taira no Masakado proves that some curses are not just stories. They are real, and they are waiting. And if you ever find yourself in Tokyo, standing before the head mound of the rebel samurai, do yourself a favor and show some respect, because you never know what might be watching you from beyond the grave.
Did you like this mystery? And what is your theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, then like and share. I'm Merc, and I'll be waiting for you in the next mystery.